Borderlands 4 is one of the most anticipated games coming out in 2025, and today we're going to talk about everything that we know about the game. We also have some new details from a developer who recently talked about Borderlands 4, so we'll go over those details and more. Hit the like button if you guys are excited, and let's get started. To start things off, first let's break down Borderlands 4's release date. Gearbox Software has confirmed that Borderlands 4 will be released in 2025, although the developer stopped short of putting a firm release date on it. We know the game will be in Take-Two's fiscal year 2026, so expect the launch sometime in the fall. This also tracks with the core Borderlands trilogy, which launched in September and October. Borderlands 3 landed in 2019, while the spin-off Tiny Tina's Wonderland dropped in 2022. And speaking of the trailer, the first Borderlands 4 trailer doesn't feature any actual gameplay, but it does set the tone for what Gearbox is trying to capture. We're leaving Pandora behind, as the Borderlands 4 setting has been confirmed, with Pandora appearing in both the original trilogy of games and Tales from the Borderlands. Gearbox has confirmed that the new game will take place on a all-new planet, a huge shock to the system. The concept art that you can see on the screen now shows what Gearbox is aiming for this time around. Like I mentioned before, the first trailer doesn't really show any actual gameplay, but it did reveal a lot of gameplay details. In Borderlands 4, you step into the shoes of a legendary vault hunter battling through waves of enemies while hunting for fresh loot on an entirely new planet. And yes, Borderlands 4 will continue to deliver the classic looter shooter experience we all know and love. Gearbox has said that a principal focus for Borderlands 4 is in the balance of approachability and complexity, stating, "I think our RPG side of the game is so important, just like our first-person side where we're always looking to expand and add depth. We're doing that on the RPG side, but we don't want to do that at the cost of complexity." Talking about a new focus for Borderlands 4, we have new Vault Hunters. Gearbox has announced that Borderlands 4 will introduce 4 new Vault Hunters, continuing the series' tradition of rotating in fresh playable characters. While it's still unclear if any familiar heroes will return, we do know the new Vault Hunters will embody classic archetypes like Soldier and Mage, as Gearbox explores new ways to expand gameplay. When it comes to the platforms Borderlands 4 will be available on, Borderlands 4 is set to launch on PC, PS5, and Xbox Series X, with 2K Games confirming its availability on both the Epic Games Store and Steam. Although Gearbox hasn't officially ruled it out, it appears Borderlands 4 won't be coming to the PS4 or the Xbox One, as these platforms were noticeably absent from the latest reveal trailer. Switch players might be out of luck as well. But with news of the Switch 2 coming out, I guess we'll have to wait and see. So as you may or may not know, Borderlands 4 is being developed by Gearbox Software, the studio behind all the mainline entries in the franchise. According to Gearbox's CEO, the game has been in development for several years, following the studio's last release, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, in 2022. Borderlands 4 will be published by 2K Games. This marks the first Borderlands title to launch with Gearbox Software, functioning as a fully owned and operated 2K studio following its acquisition by Take-Two Interactive in 2024. Next up, we just got some news from Games Radar. They recently interviewed the senior project producer, where they gave some pretty awesome gameplay details. According to the article, they said this: 16 years, 4 mainline games, and a decent handful of spin-offs later, you might imagine that Borderlands 4 has little room left to innovate. According to Anthony Nicholson, senior project producer, however, that couldn't be further from the truth. Speaking to Games Radar Plus, he explains that Borderlands 4 promises to be a bigger, more bombastic Borderlands game than ever. The article continued by saying Borderlands 4's new setting, the planet of Kairos, is a world where the outlook is bleak, the stakes are real, and the characters treat them as such, says Nicholson, immediately distancing this new game with the fairy tale tabletop stylings of recent spin-off Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. But for the slightly more serious way in which Gearbox is approaching Borderlands 4, it still won't be without the zaniness, oddity, and mayhem that makes a Borderlands game a Borderlands game. Games Radar continued by saying toilet humor isn't the only thing that makes a Borderlands game, of course. And Nicholson explains that loot fiends and build optimizers might be better catered to than ever. While he wouldn't reveal whether Borderlands 4 will offer the loot rarity rework that many diehard fans think is long overdue, he did note that the 4quel will feature billions of weapons and accessories for players to acquire. That suggests that the team has stepped up from the billion weapons it professed to have included in Borderlands 3 and Wonderlands. And that's not all. Nicholson also promises the deepest and diverse skill trees of any Borderlands title yet, as Gearbox attempts to give players an unprecedented level of expression. All of that is part of what he claims is a significant next step in the evolution of the genre. Nicholson says Gearbox is holding fast to the idea that Borderlands is the first looter shooter, but claims that Borderlands 4 will give players more freedom to loot and shoot than they've ever had before. There's still a lot more information to come on that front ahead of launch, but it's interesting to see that the studio is pointing to the series' origin, even as it works on something of a new format for the games. Games Radar then shifted focus to the world of Borderlands 4, to which they said this, and I quote, "I say something of a new format because it's still not entirely clear how much of Borderlands 4 is an open world." Gearbox CEO Randy Pitchford recently attempted to clarify that while he wouldn't say that Borderlands 4 was an open world game, it is the most open and free game in the series, with much more room for exploration than previous entries in the series. They finished off the interview with them saying, "When we asked Nicholson to expand on that, we got a slightly closer idea of what Gearbox is trying to achieve. Borderlands 4 does have some open world-like features," he says. "You'll find seamless travel between zones, for instance, and more dynamic, discoverable side missions and events, add in new traversal systems, and the world does start to open up." That said, Nicholson points out that we did not set out with the intent to create an open world game in the traditional use of that term. The Borderlands games have always had large zones to explore, and those will be back in Borderlands 4. Now, however, they'll be more closely integrated with one another, and with no map loads, players will be getting a more seamless experience, which honestly sounds awesome. I'm curious to see what they actually mean by seamless travel between zones. Perhaps they are talking about cutscenes or cinematics, but only time will tell. So with that being said, let's talk about when Borderlands 4 could release this year. As of now, there hasn't been an official announcement regarding the release date of Borderlands 4, but speculation is rampant among fans of the beloved looter shooter franchise. Given the success of Borderlands 3, which launched in 2019, and the subsequent release of Tiny Tina's Wonderlands in 2022, it's reasonable to assume that Gearbox Software has been working on the next mainline entry in the series for a while now. If we follow the typical development cycle for AAA games, Borderlands 4 could potentially release in late 2024 or more likely sometime in 2025. This would give the developers ample time to innovate and refine the gameplay while building on the foundation of its predecessors. However, the release timeline for Borderlands 4 may also be influenced by the broader strategy of its publisher, Take-Two Interactive. Take-Two has a massive title on the horizon, Grand Theft Auto 6, which is one of the most anticipated games in recent history. Rumors and reports suggest that GTA 6 could release as early as late 2024 or early 2025. If this is the case, Take-Two might strategically stagger the release of Borderlands 4 to avoid cannibalizing sales or overshadowing their flagship title. Historically, publishers tend to space out major releases to maximize attention and revenue, so it's possible that Borderlands 4 could be pushed to late 2025 or even 2026 to ensure it gets its moment in the spotlight. That said, Gearbox Software has a dedicated fan base, and the Borderlands series has always been a significant revenue driver for Take-Two. If GTA 6 is delayed beyond 2025, we could see Borderlands 4 stepping into the spotlight sooner. Ultimately, the timing will depend on the progress of development, marketing strategies, and how Take-Two balances its portfolio of games. Fans will undoubtedly be keeping a close eye on announcements from Gearbox and Take-Two in the coming months for any hints about the next chapter in the Borderlands saga. But yeah, guys, if you enjoyed this video, do me a favor and leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel with your notifications turned on. If you're excited for Borderlands 4, comment below as well. And until next time, this has been Wes, and I will talk to you guys in the next video.